Jermaine Griggs here. Welcome to another broadcast of mine. I go live every day, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, with a message of inspiration and motivation. And hopefully today will be inspiring and motivating for you. Thank you for your patience yesterday. I didn't go live. I was at a wedding and it was right at 3 p.m. and there was no way around it. So thank you for coming on today. And then I do have a message for you. So if you're in the house, will you start off with love? Hit the like, the love button, share, invite other people, because I got something I want to talk about. And that message is this. Sometimes you're trying to solve the wrong problem. And that's a message to myself. Jermaine, sometimes you're trying to solve the wrong problem. And that is a big challenge, right? I learned a long time ago you can do two things. You can either do things right, and this is a question I posed on the timeline, or you can do the right things. There is a difference, right? Some people pride themselves, like my grandma, for example. She says, I do things right. And she does. She is meticulous. She's very organized. She says when she goes to do something, she does it right. You ever heard somebody tell you something like that? And that's, efficiency, right? You do things right. Someone can count on you to make sure it's done right. The problem is a lot of us aren't doing the right things, right? That's effectiveness. There's a difference, right? I can go and choose a project I want to work on and I can do it meticulously. The problem is I don't get what I ultimately want because that's not the thing I should really be doing. So I'm doing the wrong thing right. Somebody put that in the chat room. Are you guilty of doing the wrong thing right? Because there is such a thing. And many of us spend our times doing things that don't move us towards our ultimate goal. So say you're an entrepreneur at heart, right? You're an entrepreneur at heart, but you don't find yourself partaking in entrepreneurial endeavors. Now, you do what you do very well, but the problem is, you're doing that very well over here, but that has nothing to do with your ultimate entrepreneurial pursuits and goals over here. So you may be doing the right thing. You may be doing it the right way, but you're not focused on the right things for you, for where your heart is leaning. So that's an example of that. And I want to tell you a quick story about these astronauts, right? These astronauts. And so we sent them to space, right? So this team of astronauts, they went to space and they noticed that their ballpoint pens didn't work right in space, right? They were useless. They couldn't write anything down because the ink would leak from the refills because of the low pressure, right? And zero gravity. So pens were useless. So they came back to Earth, right? Came back to Earth. And they explained this problem. And so NASA scientists began to try to solve this problem. So a team of 3 scientists came together, put their genius brains together. And a year later, $70,000 later, the team presented their solution. This was a state-of-the-art pen that would work at zero gravity and very low pressures. Ta-da! And they unveiled their magical pen. Right? Meanwhile, another team of astronauts had the same exact problem. In space, their pens didn't work. Ink would leak because of the zero gravity, the low pressure. But their solution only cost 10 cents and was almost immediate. And you could go get it from your preschool kid. I can go upstairs and my son could solve this problem. Why? They simply used pencils. Did anybody get it, right? $70,000 1 year because they got fixated on a certain type of solution, right? And so, smart people got in a room and thought of smart solutions, but they were fighting the wrong problem, right? The end goal and objective was to get things written down or to document whatever you needed to, right? The solution didn't have to be a pen, but you ever been in a situation or a group dynamic and everybody's focused on the wrong thing? How many times do we do this in life? Well, we're focused on the wrong thing and we could only realign ourselves to the true goal and objective. So How do you start thinking objectively? Always have your why in mind. If any one of those smart astronauts just said, what are we trying to do here? Why are we trying to do this? Right? It didn't take $70,000. It didn't take a year of research to come up with a pen. Maybe for the pen's sake, if we just wanted to invent a new pen. But if it was about solving this problem, the other astronauts had it right with just a simple 10-cent pencil, because if it was about getting stuff down on paper or whatever, right, that was the solution. And that's the message today. Sometimes we're trying to solve the wrong problem. And so knowing your why and knowing your objective in any situation will help, will be a tremendous help to move you forward. Let's say you're stressing. I mean, since I have a wedding in the forefront of my mind, having attended a wedding yesterday, say you're stressing about this wedding and getting it done, and oh, we got to do this and we got to do that. You know what would be helpful? Is standing back and saying, what is the objective of this? Right? We want to tie the knot, and we want everyone to just have a good time. And then you start listing, what are all the ways that we can get this objective done? It doesn't have to be with that fancy, expensive solution over there, right? It doesn't have to be with this thing over here traditionally, right? But what are all the creative ways that we can get to that objective? Having a good time, right? Everybody's waiting until I got money to enjoy themselves. They think just because they don't have the means to take their kids to Disneyland. And I stopped by today. Disneyland is expensive, all right? I feel like I got some means, but I look at that price and I'm like $108 to wait in line all day, right? I look at that and say, we can find other ways to make that happen, right? But if we start thinking creatively and resourcefully, we can get to the same objective. And like this astronaut story, it doesn't take the equivalent of a year or $70,000, right? I don't have to wait to be happy. I'm not going to be happy when I become a first-time homeowner. I can be happy now, right? I don't have to wait to be happy till I finally get that job promotion and some extra, disposable income. There are ways to be happy now. I bought my kids some fancy stuff in life only to find that stuff broken. I was just telling my wife, how did they break this Xbox One? They didn't stuff 3 and 4 DVDs in it. I think I know who did it. Y'all guess if you know my kids, right? And then when I turn around, they're not even worried about the $400 Xbox One. They're over there playing on the $6 fidget spinner. If you have kids, they're just spinning these little plastic wheel things, and this darn thing costs $6. So sometimes we get fixated on specific things, stressing ourselves out, especially Christmas, parents, oh, how am I going to do this? And my kids want that, when the end objective is these kids just want to have a good time. And there's a million ways for your kids to have a good time for free if you really want to know the truth. And that's just one example. So there was this thing called 5 Whys by a man named Sakichi Toyoda. Not to be confused with Toyota, I haven't said it, Toyota, which actually embraced his philosophy as well. But it's called the 5 Whys, and all you do is just keep asking yourself why. Whenever you think you're focused on the wrong problem or you're not at the right root cause, just keep asking why, right? The battery in my car is dead. That might be the first why. You might say, why, right? Well, the alternator is not functioning. Okay, now that's the second why, right? Then you might say the alternator belt has broken once you ask yourself why to that previous question, right? So that's the third why. You keep asking yourself why. Well, the alternator belt was well beyond its useful service life and not replaced, right, in time. And then you keep asking why. Well, you get to the final why, and after you ask yourself this 5 times, and the vehicle was not maintained according to the recommended service schedule. In other words, I didn't take care of my vehicle, and that's why the battery is dead. So many people, when they try to get to the problem of something, or they try to look for something to blame, right? It's always pointed outward, or it's always like this or that. But if you keep asking why, there are very few situations that don't come back to Jermaine Griggs, right? Because you got to keep asking why. Even when I was stranded in my car, right? You keep asking why, and you know what it came back to when I realized it? We were sitting in the car with all of our iPhones connected, and the car wasn't on. It was in that power mode, but it wasn't on. I had drained my battery. And so when I cranked and then went down the street, the next morning I found myself stuck in the middle of the road. I don't know how it happened, but that was the case. But it came down to something that I did. All right, so sometimes, we're just trying to solve the wrong problem. And when we get why and we get the objective of any situation, a good situation like a beautiful wedding that needs to be planned, or a bad situation, trying to figure out why finances or things are all in a disarray, good or bad, why is the answer. And you won't be those astronauts trying to figure out how to make this pen work in outer space for $70,000 in 1 year of research and 3 scientists when they could have just used a 10-cent pencil. You're focused on the wrong thing. When we get the thing right, now do the right things right. Now we're not doing the wrong things right. And when you get those two things together, you've got both effectiveness because you're doing the right things, and you got efficiency because you're doing those right things right. And that's the message today.